Allora, me llamo Dev, and welcome to Sequels and Spinoffs. Me llamo is not actually Dev. Me llamo is Kyle Snow, Pajod Media, and with me is my best friend and co-host Ryan Power.
Whoa.
A lot of pressure on there.
Whoa. Hello. We're here. We're here to talk sequels. We're here to talk spin-offs. We're here to talk lots of stuff, actually. Not lots, but maybe lots.
Yeah, a little bit, because we made a mistake.
We got some nuggets here. We got some nuggets.
Yeah. We did go feature heavy all week, and then we saved all our cast for Sunday again.
I've still seen a bunch of stuff this week and lately. Of recent note, I have seen Logan. I've seen that new movie called Get Out, which I really want to talk about. Oh man, Kyle, have you seen that movie yet?
I haven't, and I don't remember what it's about, but I'm sure that
we'll get into that maybe in a little bit.
Okay.
I've been watching some of the UK The Office as well.
Oh yeah, I watched that not that long ago. I think when we started doing this project.
What have you been watching? Just before we kind of dig in, we'll just kind of get an idea of what everyone's been watching.
Well, outside of everyone being the two of us, outside of the usual Giant Bomb stuff.
Whole group here.
Yeah. Alex and I have been watching the US Office continuously. Mm-hmm. We finally made it into season 8, which is past where she'd ever been before. So she, like, post Michael Scott is a whole new era to her. That's been surprising and delighting.
Yeah, there's some good episodes in there.
There's good episodes.
It's a different show once he leaves, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. I mean, but they were smart enough to be like, we're going to take this away from the manager, and Andy's kind of just there, but it's more about Jim and Dwight and the beloved
we can do a little bit of The Office talk. So you've seen the British The Office before you watched the American The Office?
Not before. I mean, well, before this time. But yeah, no, I watched the UK The Office for the first time recently, and the US one I've done. It would have been 2 complete run-throughs at the time. The first time I watched through season 6, but that was all that was out at the time.
Oh, okay. And
then I came back years later and watched the whole thing again. And then now I'm watching it a third time.
Yeah, so I had watched the American Office last year, and then I rewatched it again this year, the beginning of the year. And now we're watching. There's only 2 seasons of the UK version, but we've been kind of making our way through some of that.
They run pretty quick too. Like not that many episodes in each season.
It's kind of similar in more ways than I thought it would be.
The first season's almost identical. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always thought that like it was more like Whose Line, where it was kind of like a UK version that was tailored to UK audiences, and they brought some of the same people over. Different host, obviously. If you're not familiar with Whose Line, it was still on the air. It's an improv comedy show, and it started in the UK, and then Drew Carey hosted here, and now it's back on the air, hosted by Aisha Tyler.
Yes.
But I always thought it was it would be kind of similar to that, whereas kind of like a sketch show that's just like, yeah, we took some ideas from it, like this idea of people in an office, and then you watch the first 4 episodes of the UK The Office, and we're already on season 2, I believe. There's not really that many episodes in general. It was kind of just like an idea. It seemed like a couple seasons of just pilot ideas, but a lot of shows that air on BBC in the UK are smaller in scale. It's just kind of kind of like that thing. And it's like almost identical. The only thing that the American The Office kind of does different is the side characters that are established in accounts and in the different departments get more screen time, especially as the seasons roll on in the American version.
Yeah, well, you know why that is, right? Like that was actually.
Well, they have more episodes, so they have more time to focus on those people.
Well, like originally, most of those people actually weren't actors. They had different roles, and they just like stuck them in there because they're like, well, we need to make it look like more than 5 people work here. So like Toby is a writer of the show. Phyllis, I think, worked in like makeup or something like that. Meredith and Angela also had like they weren't originally actors. They just sit in the seats and like yell at Kevin once, and then like, oh, other people work here.
That changed as the seasons roll on, and they actually became paid legitimate actors.
Yeah, well, I think they were paid. It was just, but they were considered extras at the time. And then it's like, oh no, like you guys actually have characters. Like, originally Creed wasn't quite as weird.
They even established those characters further as the seasons roll on.
Oh, absolutely.
Thus far in the UK version, it's basically just been
Malcolm or Keith or whatever his name is.
David Brent is Michael Scott. Pretty much. The awkward humor where he's kind of like a child and it's all about him, and it kind of that stuff's always Michael Scott. As much as most people might say that's the best reason to watch The Office, for me it's actually the pranks from Jim on Dwight.
Jim and Dwight,
and then the Jim and Pam stuff. Like that's always been like the Michael Scott has some moments, but for the most part, it's like his scenes are just awkward. Like he's so forceful and Brent's the same way. Like
To a certain extent, they have some really good moments where you can see that Michael actually knows a little bit more of what he's doing. Do you remember the subplot where Jim and him were co-managing, and Jim like kind of was a little bit dismissive of Michael, and Michael was kind of doing his whole shtick, but then you could, when he had to explain himself to Jim
yeah, but
occasionally,
it's not the shtick that I'm talking about. It's mostly how they're very immature. Like
right?
in a
But you can
meeting,
see
if
that,
someone says, "Oh, that's a nice tie," they would instantly go, "Well, my tie's nicer. What are you talking about? My tie." Like they're
right?
so
But you'll
they have
see,
no confidence, and it's so odd because it's like a character that has the utmost outgoingness, so you think they're confident, but they're actually just as insecure as like anyone. And
right?
like
That's
like
exactly,
in a in
literally
a
that was
in,
me in my teens and early 20s.
I know
Yeah,
it's just the problem. The problem is that's not always funny to me. Like you throw them
yeah,
in a situation, sometimes it's funny. Like I'll give you an example. In The American The Office, there's an episode where um, Michael promised all these college kids that he would give them tuition.
Scott's Tots.
They Yeah, exactly. And then they do the whole song and stuff, and it's really awkward, but that's like it's kind of funny because you know he's not going to be able to give it and he's going to have to try to talk his way out. Like
Yeah,
there's an aspect to that that I was like, okay, that's funny. But then there are just situations where everyone's kind of sitting quietly talking in the office and they just go and interrupt and say super offensive things and then just get like pouty and leave, and you're like, that wasn't funny, that was just it's like, okay, you've captured a very weird awkward situation that happens in real life that I feel weird and awkward now. Like I just I don't know. Like I've always been a praiser of The Office, but I think those are the moments where I think it's a little. They're using that to establish the character to say this is a real person. That's why he acts like this, because you couldn't very well have him be this comedy crazy character and then have him be normal on the other side, right? Because that's just not
yeah.
how that works. But you know, they do some of that stuff with Brent as well. David Brent, uh, which is the manager. Martin Freeman plays
Tim,
Tim,
Tim
aka
Canterbury.
Jim. And he's been the star for me thus far, but I'm a huge Martin Freeman fan.
Oh yeah, he's great. I think that they're. It's funny because they were clearly built to be the same characters, but Gareth and Dwight have a few distinct differences that I find both of them to be charming in their own ways. Like Dwight seems a little bit less naive than Gareth does.
They make Dwight smarter, but not really, because like the type of pranks that like
Well, the
naive
shit
and
that he falls for is like, yeah, like outside of the pranks though, like Gareth's like literally just somebody who's like, yeah, no, I trained in the military. Like that's just how the world is, right? And then it's like, no, Gareth, you kind of just
yeah, but Dwight's the same way. Country bumpkin doesn't know how the world is in a lot of ways, constantly gets in trouble because he believes the way to handle things is not the way to handle things because he
yes,
grew up in a farm. Like they very much lean into the same naivety of both
right. But
characters.
compared to like your Jim and your Tim are basically the same. Don and Pam, especially in the first two seasons, very similar. Um,
The receptionist, like the
yeah,
story is the receptionist has a girlfriend or a boyfriend who's chauvinistic male.
works in the
And I
warehouse.
mean, to
Yes,
be fair, the UK version takes place years previous um, to
not many.
the
It was
American
started in
version.
2001, and the first season of the American one was 2005.
Yeah, so 4 years. The
It's
reason
not,
I'm making that of note is because that doesn't might not seem like a lot to you, but going back and rewatching the UK Office and going, oh, they're smoking at work. You can do
yep.
that in the building. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, they're having an office party and getting wasted. You can't do that anymore. Like shit that you could just do. And oh,
Well, they get wasted at the
casual sexism was still more of a thing in 2001 than it is.
yeah,
Like men
and
being
in
very
Europe too.
men. Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah, like
Like
wasn't
things that
Tim's
even like
birthday gift like a giant inflatable penis? It's like,
because you're right. The Office, it wasn't the American version was in 2005, but the later seasons were in a more progressive world, so they showed the transition to that. Like there was lots of episodes about that, even in the first season, where
yeah,
there's less of that about. Like they traditionally use the word poof to describe a homosexual in the UK version of The Office, which is a British slang for it. But like they in the American version use the gay storyline to like show how progressive it is. Like they even have a pivotal gay
right.
character,
And
right? Like
people don't get
again, these are
offended
things
when
that UK
David
The
says
Office
poo.
wouldn't have dealt with because that wasn't a thing. Like it was a thing and going on in the world, but it was still the movements were not as mainstream as they had become, and then would go on to become, up till now where we are in the world, right?
Yeah, and like even like you can see the difference of like what they would do. Like they almost censor nothing in the UK version, whereas the US one they'll do like a
Yeah,
censoring that like like David will say poof and everyone just kind of gives them a look and then they go back to their day. Whereas like if somebody says, I think like Kevin at one point, like when they're talking about Oscar's sexuality, Kevin says faggot, like not maliciously, but he says it, they bleep it, and everyone's like, Kevin, like, oh, and you're like, okay, like
yeah.
that's what would happen in those two places. In the UK, everyone's like, oh, you said a thing. Like, I guess.
There's a lot more recognition back then, and I feel like that started to fade. Um, like we're obviously social political commentary to a degree here, but the idea that boys will be boys used to be more generally accepted, and now it's like, too bad, you don't, you can't say that. Boys can't be boys. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
Like that's
not
kind of,
not in the office
you
they
know,
can't be.
yeah, that's kind of, push me to shove. It's kind of the politically correct version of the world we live in now, where it's like kind of gone so hard that way that there's some people are like, no, we can't actually say what we want at the office. You can't tell us what we can and can't say. Like there is that divide, if you
He
will.
will not
But
divide us, Ryan.
the UK version is it very much has the same tone and style, and it's got some good characters and some good actors in there. I'm enjoying it for the most part.
Yeah,
Um, like I said, it does have some of those awkward scenes, which I think they're just using to establish how weird of a character your main manager is. But
yeah,
there are just too many instances, like not too many. That's the wrong word. There are just instances where you do feel awkward while watching it, and it's hard to tell if that's intentional or not. Like, are we meant to feel like the person who's sitting there going, "This character is a real douchebag"? Like, is that supposed to be the intent? Like, are we supposed to, like? That's the thing. It's tough to tell sometimes because it's like often when this happens with both Brent or Michael, when they're doing, as you call it, their shtick, not always comedy, not always, sometimes it's just weird, their shtick, right? You sometimes react like everyone in the office, where you're sitting there quietly going, this isn't really funny. This is just, fuck. Did he say that? Like, did he just, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're kind of reacting like they are. Like, you quietly say nothing, and then in your mind you're going, this guy's fucked. Like, this is a douchebag, right? And I feel like that though they capture that, but I don't know if that's intentional. Like, is it intentional that we're supposed to feel like the members of the office who thinks that the manager is a big douche? Is that, I guess that's what I'm asking.
hmm it's hard to say. I think that
Yeah.
one thing that, having seen both of them, I think that Michael is a little bit. David seems to be a lot more lazy, whereas Michael seems to be somebody who's got good intentions, but he's a little bit not as cognizant of the way the world works. Because both of them are like, well, morale is obviously the most, morale is the most important thing, and
Yeah,
Michael
but
talks about it. But I
come
feel
on,
like David.
neither of them
Hang on, hang
believe
on.
that. Neither of
Uh,
them believe
I
that.
think Michael actually does. I think he's like, he thinks that workplace morale is his job, like more than anything else. He's like, well, I have people who can do the business part of things, but nobody can do what I do. And you see like a little bit more of that when he has to start explaining himself to Jim when they're both running things, and Jim's like, hey, like we can't just blow this shit off. Everyone's really worried that we're getting downsized, and then like Michael wanted to go play like a weird game, and then Jim's like completely resistant to it the whole time. And then when they leave, Jim's like about to be like, Michael, we can't stop doing this. And Michael closes the office door. He's like, shut up, Jim. These people need this on a day like today. We can't do anything.
Yeah, I know.
And you're like, okay, like, but that's not something David Brent would do. Admittedly, that's like years later, so maybe
With
not so much.
development and all that other stuff, but
Yeah, but it
I
feels
don't
more
know.
like Michael's like specifically trying to do a thing, whereas David's like, if I say morale, it lets me get away with being lazy.
Yeah, but Michael pushes it to that extreme where he says they need that when they. I mean, I don't know if, like, to me it just
No,
feels
I'm
like
saying that he genuinely believes it, whereas I don't think
maybe
David
though,
Brent
but like
actually.
I don't know. I feel like he just uses that as a crux. Like I kind of feel like, much like the Brent character, the whole essence is that he's just a big kid who has tantrums and wants what he wants when he wants it, regardless of what anyone else wants. And the only reason he's in a management position is because he can leverage that to get what he wants, which is what makes the whole situation feel forced and awkward to me sometimes. When your boss shows up and tells you a joke and then gets mad at you when you don't laugh, that's wrong. That's weird. That's not a
Yeah.
situation that anyone should want to be in. But that's
No,
the
nobody
whole
does want to be
essence
in
of that
that.
character. He's like, I'm needy. I need you to laugh at my joke. And you're like, this is weird. Just, this is weird. Like
You
you
never
have
worked
to.
for a boss like that before?
I would probably start laughing at them and make them feel socially insecure, or I would tell them, pick up your freaking slacks, bud. Like,
You can't say that to your boss though, Ryan. Like that doesn't usually work.
yeah, you can. What are they gonna do?
I mean, tons of things. Now you get all the shitty shifts, and now they start trying to pay people. People can do things all the time. It's office politics, man.
Then I'll bring that up with HR. There's no rule that states I have to laugh at their joke to get
No,
good
no, no, no.
hours.
They're not going
They,
to be.
Kyle, I've
Okay.
never actively been in a situation where I've had a boss like that ever.
No,
Most of
I
them are
have.
normal people who talk to you like adults and go, "Hey, you show up for this shift. Hey, you should, yeah, okay, let's have a," like. There's no, "Hey, laugh at my forced conversation." Like, nope, that, like, you normally don't have for, like, The Office paints people in weird ways. Like, both shows do this, and it could just be because those, like, I haven't worked as much in those type of settings. I've worked a little bit in an office setting, a couple times, but um, again, whereas I'm, after that I'm more warehouse work, right? So there's just too much work to be get done to socialize that much. Like, you're just
Yeah.
working. In an office setting, it's a little more different because you socialize a lot more. But that type of, we're going to go really outside the bounds socializing. Like, I do some of that, but that's like, you do that with the people you like. You determine before you go into a conversation with someone, are you at that level? And the more that you bullshit with them, like I would have personal conversations with when I used to work at a warehouse with people I'd go to a bar with afterwards who were
Yeah,
some
sure.
like the dudes, but I wouldn't have that type of conversation with my boss casually. And like The Office constantly has the boss character force those conversations with
That
people out of nowhere.
does
And to me,
happen.
that's just I would not engage with that person. I would actively try to get them fired. That is a horrible thing to do. If I don't want to hang out with you, don't make me at work. That's weird.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
weird.
I run into this with bosses and more so with coworkers now, where it's like some people think that everyone has to be best friends because they work together, and you have a little more leniency with you can tell them like fuck off and leave me alone because they're not your boss.
You don't have to be rude. You can just be like, listen.
I'm awkward. Not. I don't genuinely say fuck off and leave me alone, Ryan. But
yeah, I see what you mean.
What I'm saying though is I've also, not for very long, but have also done the labor thing, and it does happen a lot less there. I think that running into those weird social situations at work is more common than your experiences would indicate. I think is a fair statement.
Yeah,
yes.
Especially
I think that you run into it. People run into it a lot more on average than you did, and you just kind of have to.
Fields are generally not that. It's do your job.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Right, what you see in the warehouse, like most of those guys either are just trying to do work and then Michael gets in their way. Obviously, because you see a little more of the warehouse in the U.S., right? Like Daryl, when he's still down there, is like, Mike, we got a lot of deliveries to do, and then everyone's either doing their work or like, oh, these are the same guys who go out to the bar kind of thing, right? But for the most part, it's just you'll see like,
oh yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't capture realistic experiences. I'm just saying that it's a weird thing to highlight that. But
it happens a lot. Like, let me just
weird social situation. Like, yeah, but like for me, it just doesn't feel funny. I don't laugh at those situations. I think they're just awkward.
They are awkward, but you can relate to them when you've been in that situation.
I don't know. To me, those situations are like the type of situations. Not only do I try to avoid, I try to be as blunt as possible. Like, not rude, but like to make sure those aren't the situations.
Sure.
Like if someone starts talking like the way they were joking, I would probably interrupt them and ask them what they are doing. I would say, "What are you doing right now? Are you making this? Like, explain to me what you think is happening."
Yeah,
because we need to stop this charade because this is you're entering a social situation with all these weird like you have weird implications.
When you have too many
right now, we need to define this. Like that's the
you don't have time to stop and do that every time. Sometimes you just have to pick your battles. But I've run into those moments. I know, Ryan, but that's why I also don't think that you in a job that revolves around like required a social setting, like waiting tables. I don't think that would be for you.
I mean, I don't know. I do meetings now, and they go fine.
Yeah, because you're working with a small group of people who you can have that kind of a conversation with. But like, I have to work with some people who I'm like, if you were dead, nobody would care. Like in certain cases, it's one-on-one situations. So I've been stuck at a table where like 10 people are talking, and I'm like, 3 of you are the dumbest people I've ever met. And I've had those moments. There's a specific episode I think where Toby tries to start a conversation with Jim, where Jim just like walks by him and he goes, "Oh yeah, have you seen the blah blah?" Like grabs a pizza and just walks out the door, and like. We watched that episode, and I was like, I did almost that exact same thing without the pizza 2 hours ago, where I was like, oh, yeah, that's a really good point. And then I like walk away, like mid-conversation, just like blow it off.
When it's coworkers, you can blow that off, right?
Yeah, you can even do it with bosses in certain situations. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
like, you just have to pick your moments better.
They technically can't legally punish you if you're not social.
No, not for that though, Ryan. But they can start being like, oh, well, I'm just going to start watching, and every time you bring out the door,
30 seconds late today. Yeah.
Yep.
Shit like that. Yeah.
You'll see shit like that happen sometimes. When you work with a punch clock, they won't give people a hard time for being 5 minutes late, but they'll give you a hard time for being 3 minutes late.
Just the type if my boss ever had issues like that, like not with the times, it was just like, it'd just be
well, that's just an example. Or like,
let's discuss this so that it can be a situation where we then chill. Like,
but sometimes it's that their goal isn't to like they just want you gone, so they'll just start like writing you up for every little thing, and then they'll just kick you up. It's like it's not like, oh, I fired you because you had bad like you didn't laugh at my jokes. It's I fired you because you had these 3 write-ups. Like that's not an uncommon thing. So that's why people don't like to hang out with their bosses generally.
Fair. All right.
Yeah.
The Office.
Anyway, yeah. So
people. It's pretty good.
Pretty good. We're almost done it. We're like halfway through season 8.
The UK one, I don't know what I think is better. The American one has more characters and it's longer.
Yeah, and it's longer. The only real difference of character now that I think about it is their like large accountant is not like Kevin at all.
I mean, he kind of is.
He's way more intelligent. He's dumb-ish, but he's not like that dumb. He's just like.
They just did a bit where he went in to go answer the the boilerplate ridiculous questions, which everyone relates to, those questions that mean nothing. You have to tick off a box.
Oh yeah, but he was. I think he was just fucking with them though.
I don't know. Hey, you want me to tell you them again?
Because that's
I don't know.
That's one of the options, though. I don't know, right? Like this.
Yeah, but then he asks him again to re-say what the options are. Like they clearly make it that he's slow and like I
he's
don't know. There's
not.
a lot of
No. Watch the rest of the. That's like the one time they do that, but I feel like it's more of like he just doesn't give a
Kevin
fuck.
also sings and dances and all that other stuff. So
yeah, and just has a dumber voice.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, what was that movie you were talking about? Get Out.
2 movies I watched. Logan.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that?
Oh, of course I saw Logan, dude. Movies.
Did you saw Logan in theaters? Yeah.
I did. I saw it on my birthday.
Okay. Chris isn't here. He hasn't seen that yet. Chris and I still might do that for a powering through the movie mail. I don't know though. That's a movie you shouldn't talk through. That movie is so good.
It's a pretty good movie.
I really liked it. Might be my favorite X-Men based movie.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah, sort of.
I don't know, man. Watching Charles go crazy, I'm like,
Oh, dude, are you kidding me? The opening scene where you see him going crazy in a chair and singing and dancing was one of the most charming things.
It was charming, but like I felt bad. Like, this is one of the smartest men in the world.
That's what happens in real life.
Yeah, I know.
And they're trying to like reflect that he reads everyone's minds and that it causes problems and he makes it go even crazier. And he's trying to like to me, I really get into that. Like that's like. Yes, that's interesting and fascinating and different.
Of course, it's fascinating, but it's still like, man, like this was all that time you spent with Charles Xavier, and you're like, look what he's a shell of his former self. Like it's sad.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
I don't want to spoil anything. It's kind of just came out recently on Blu-ray and such. So
yeah. How did you feel about X-23?
Fine.
Yeah.
Like she's supposed to be a younger character, and she's basically the next Wolverine. They made her his daughter, which I don't know if that's in canon or not. I'm not as up to date. I'm more of an Avengers comics guy.
Yeah. Well, I think she's like a like clone daughter. Like I don't think like.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they cloned it. I'm assuming developed her in Weapon X. That was the idea. I liked
X-23.
I liked the guy who played. Forget his name now, but he had a metal arm. That actor is from Narcos. He is a cop with
a metal arm.
Also
doubled his jacks from Mortal Kombat.
Didn't have a metal arm in Narcos.
Just everything he's in, she should now have a metal arm.
No, he was a regular old dude, and he was chasing down Pablo Escobar with what's his name from Game of Thrones, who's now dead. He got his head smashed in. Spoilers.
Our boy Oberyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two are detectives in Narcos.
Pedro Pascal is his real name.
Yeah, there we go, Pedro Pascal. And I really like this guy. I can't remember his name now, but I thought he did a good job in this. He was like the villain, hunting them down and trying to do that. Yeah. There was a lot of death. It was rated R. That was like they tried to make a big deal about it being rated R. I thought they did leverage it, but not like there was no scenes in general where I was like, oh my god, that's super gory. But again, we're coming in a post Game of Thrones world where we've seen.
Yeah, we see gore and
stuff.
Yeah.
Good way to end the character. I'm not going to say how they end it, but I think they did a good job with it.
It felt very Last of Us-ish to me too, like with like older man who's got a grudge, finds a girl that he doesn't like very much at the start, but then he goes way out of his way for it.
There was some dark thing that happened in the universe too. Like this is set in 2029, I believe.
Yeah, 2029 or 2030.
And the X-Men universe continuity is supposed to be at play here, right? That's why we have old Xavier, and Logan's already like 200 years old, so he's super old. And like the whole idea is that his powers are starting to fade, and as his powers fade, it doesn't matter what happens. Like let's assume he just lays in a bed, he will die because
eventually,
his skin is made of his bone is made of adamantium, which will poison him.
Not just that, but he's lived through so many like should have killed him already events that his healing factor saved through. He was at Hiroshima when the nuke went off, if I remember correctly. So it's like he has a shit ton of radiation that just like kind of like Deadpool. It's just like, well, he's constantly almost dying, and then his healing factor would catch up and save him.
In the comics as well, like they did lots of stuff to Wolverine to piss him off. Like I remember there's a story once where they threw him at the sun and just left him there for a while, like some cosmic guy did, and then he was just like burning all his stuff, but he wouldn't die because of the adamantium, so he would just burn his skin off. He's basically just stuck in a hell. But like the idea is that even if he wasn't, even when his healing factor all fades, right? Like there are some injuries he has in Logan that wouldn't heal, but he's still poisoned. Even if those injuries healed, it doesn't change the fact that once his healing factor is up, he doesn't. It's not like the next time he dies, he dies. He would then immediately die because a human can't. First of all, his brain, which heals, wouldn't be. I mean, he would probably go insane from 200 years of memories and everything all really jamming up in his body, not helping with that. Second of all,
adamantium, foreign elements in his blood and body.
Exactly. Like that's the whole reason he's
radiation
alive, having an adamantium skeleton. is because he has a healing factor.
Yes, he probably actually would have lived longer if he didn't have the adamantium skeleton. Like if because he still had the
Maybe
he still had the knuckle claws,
he used
right?
to
Like,
have
partly
claws.
bone. Yeah,
but he would actually make those, I believe. Like he would actually stick things in his hands because he would heal, right? So he would stick things and attach them to his bone. So that
if I remember correctly,
come out.
no, if I remember correctly, he does because what was it? Days of Future Past, like because he goes back to his old body, like his current consciousness of like.
No, he has bone claws, but they're not natural. His skeleton doesn't produce that.
I thought they did.
No, because your arm doesn't grow. He doesn't grow. He doesn't grow extra bones. That's not how.
I thought he just had them and then. No, I thought that was like
he
another thing that he just had bone claws.
When he was like in the
okay, I just got confirmation from a very reliable source that he was born with bone claws.
Right now, man.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna trust her because I don't want to sleep on the couch tonight, Ryan. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to find alternate sources.
That's fine.
But you heard it here first from the future Mrs. Kyle Snow. And then he was also running into issues in Logan where like because turns out that when you stick claws out your hand, stick them into someone else's bloodstream, and then pull them back in, you get a bunch of diseases because that's not healthy.
Apparently, it was established in Wolverine Volume 2, number 75, that he has had bone claws all along as part of his mutation.
Okay.
They're always thought to be part of the adamantium coating process. This was disproven after Magneto ripped all the adamantium out of his body, leaving him with bone claws.
Yes.
That's in the comics, so who knows what the actual movie canon is.
Yeah, again, I think it's fair to say
with finicky details like this, they could change all this if they
want. Yeah, but if they haven't said anything, I think it's fair to just assume that.
Yeah, Logan, I believe in that continuity had them in X-Men Origins Wolverine at the beginning.
Yeah,
and I guess that counts as canon, even though Days of Future Past retconned all that. I don't know.
Right, but Days of Future Past, he also had the bone claws, so I think he just has bone claws.
In the past.
We're talking about movie universe now.
Yeah, in the past, yeah, but it doesn't say how he got them.
30 years to fully grow.
Apparently, it took him about 30 years to fully grow. So it's a puberty thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
In the comic canon, correct.
Yes.
Yeah. They don't actively describe it in the movie canon. Not that the movie canon is all together anyway. It's all over the place right now.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say though that if the movie canon doesn't establish something, you can use comic book canon. Movie canon can overwrite it in the movie universe, but not like if they don't say it's just like probably just the same.
I mean, yeah, but they don't really make note of it to be a big deal. Like it's not like he's going to have bone claws again in the future.
No, he's going to.
And I believe X-23 uses bone claws in the movie.
She does, but she's got 2 of them.
Or does she have adamantium?
And one, no, she doesn't have adamantium. They're bone claws.
I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, she's a badass in that movie too.
She is a badass.
I wasn't expecting. There was like a level of kick-ass that I thought was really cool. It was like, holy crap, this young chick is just dominating these fools.
Yeah, actually very similar to the movie Kick-Ass as well. Or is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Like,
yeah, that's what I was implying.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like it was just pretty kick-ass.
There was a scene in that movie where there was like a female sidekick who was younger.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage's daughter.
Yeah, correct. All right, Logan, you should check it out, people. It's good.
It's good. Hugh Jackman, good actor.
Yeah. Hugh Jackman said he'd bring back Wolverine, by the way. The only way he'd play him again. Now, he said this is the last role, but he would say he'd play them if the Avengers license was like if the Marvel, let's word that correctly. If the X-Men movie canon or the characters from X-Men were allowed to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at which point Hugh Jackman did say he would want to reprise him just to have the one big scene with all the characters.
Yeah, well, that would be cool. Like it was just.
Yeah, I mean, seeing Hugh Jackman with Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans.
Yeah,
I dig that. All right.
And if they could find a decent Reed Richards.
So I guess I'll wrap up here with Get Out, which you have not seen.
I haven't.
It's not spoilery.
Please.
Great movie.
Okay. What was the synopsis of this movie? Like the plot again? Because I can't remember.
Okay, so this
I know I've seen the trailer.
And written by Jordan Peele of Keegan and Peele.
Yes. Key and Peele.
Sorry. Keegan Michael Key. I thought it was.
Keegan Michael Key. So it's Key and Peele.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was Keegan. I thought it was he used his first name.
Keegan is his first name.
Yep. Key and Peele. There you go. He is a comedian. They do like a stand-up sketch show, the two of them together. And Keegan Michael Key also appears on the new versions of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Random, but yeah, he's also good on that. So Get Out is like a horror comedy in the vein of something like Cabin in the Woods, Josh Whedon's Cabin in the Woods, kind of sets up a traditional horror setting and uses a lot of traditional horror camera shots, horror music, like heavy violin, kind of like nee, like at tense moments, things like that.
Yeah, but it's a
And
comedy.
it's horror comedy. Yeah.
Okay, so is it kind of like The Happening?
No, it's
With,
kind of like
with
Cabin in
Favorite?
the Woods. Have you seen
Yeah,
Cabin in the
I
Woods?
haven't. That's why I was
Oh,
asking if it was kind of like.
Cabin in the Woods is a fantastic horror movie that is Chris Hemsworth's in it. People should see it. I can even sing Cabin in the Woods. Wow. Man.
Yeah.
This is
No, I
like
wasn't
this
gonna
is
try to just relate it to a different movie just to be an asshole. I just hadn't seen your example and was trying to go.
my example.
I'm sure that it's a great example, Ryan. I just haven't seen it.
Sorry, the point. I guess the point I'm making is there hasn't been a lot of horror comedies in this vein.
No,
There's
okay.
a few. Like the idea is that we take a convention and completely twist it on its heads with crazy shit. So
Yeah.
Cabin in the Woods starts off like a movie that you would expect a horror movie to be about. Oh, there's a group of horny teenagers going out to the cabins. You got your stoner, you got your jock, you got your slutty chick, you got your
Yeah.
intelligent chick, you got your virgin, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they all start dying because horrible shit happens. But then when you peel the layer back from that, there is a whole universe of established things and rules and why everything is happening. This is the same. There
Okay.
is there is a traditional, oh, is there racism going on here? Because it's about a black man who his girlfriend takes him to visit his parents in a very white dominated suburbs, and he starts noticing weird things. They have some black servants, for example, and they behave very strangely. Things
So
of
like
that
stuck in the middle of
nature.
like clan headquarters, or
But it's not that.
okay.
Because the characters are very not racist, and all the servants are very, oh, we're treated very well. We chose to come here. We weren't hired, like we weren't forced, and none of this stuff. I'm not going to spoil anything about the movie because I think it's fantastic, and some of the stuff they do,
Is that
some
still
of
in
the directions
theaters?
they go. No, it
No.
is out. Some of the stuff they do, it came out on the 23rd, I believe. Some of the stuff they do is pretty good.
No. So it is in theaters or not? Sorry.
No, it came out on the 23rd.
20.
On Blu-ray.
Oh, on
Blu-ray.
Blu-ray. Okay, sorry. When you said came out, that implies theaters to me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's a fantastic movie. The reason it's horror comedy, and the Cabin in the Woods does a lot of this too. It cuts to people outside of the situation, and those people provide a lot of comedic relief. Like during periods of the movie, he has a black friend who he calls, who's his best friend, named Rod, and he calls him several times throughout the movie while he's at the house, because the house is, in the burbs, miles and miles away from cities, right? Like it's like
yeah.
the neighborhood,
Mhm.
rich people, and his friend usually provides a lot of the funny commentary, like like starts freaking out, making jokes, being slang, that type
Sure.
of stuff. So it's still witty, it's still very witty, and you can definitely tell that it's written by Jordan Peele. Like if you are familiar with their stand-up stuff, there's some stuff in there
I've seen them.
that is of similar writing quality. But like what surprised me most was how like, and I'd say was the same with Cabin in the Woods, how horror they leaned, like how traditional. I really didn't think they'd lean as traditional horror with this, because I thought, this would be more thriller, but like the camera shots and the tension, like there's a lot of good thriller build and even some really good horror scenes. Honestly, there's a couple good scenes of gore in this, surprising. Like I think it's a fantastic movie. Like the twists are, I don't think you could predict all of them, but it's not about whether you can predict them or not. It's kind of still about the journey. And there are legitimately scenes and ways they use the metaphors for what they're going with from a visual perspective that are awesome, and definitely show that it's a 2017 movie, not just no, we're just going to use those old. Again, he uses a lot of horror staples, but then doesn't just leave it there. He takes those staples to build something a little bigger, a little grander, a little moderner, and it's just a really good movie. I don't know like what a star rating would be, but like probably 4.5. Like if we were going to go out of 5 stars, like I dug it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Checking it out.
I generally stay away from horror, but I'm a big Key and Peele fan. So if it like leans a little bit more away from that,
I'm trying to think of another horror movie that fits into that vein. Like, have you seen any Fargo?
No, remember I haven't been able to yet.
Have you seen anything that is not just? Have you seen anything that resembles dark and comedy at the same time?
I don't know.
Like that's the whole.
If I was gonna
like
watch
this
that
is more
stuff,
horror than it is dark comedy. Like this is kind of comedy around the edges of a horror setting, whereas dark comedy is kind of making light of dark situations comedically, and it's less horror a lot of the times. But like that is more of a similar genre. Like that's why when I try to say, oh, if you're not familiar with horror movies, this isn't trying to jump scare you.
No, I always hated jump scares. Like
it's more horror, like traditionally. Like if you've ever seen the original,
like the original Saw.
or the original Saw is a good example. There's not a lot of comedy in that, but
No, not comedy, but like that was
but the
like
original
one
Saw,
of the
the original Saw is about who the killer is, right? It's very
yeah.
traditional in that way. Like this is not in that. Like this isn't that type of movie. There isn't one big bad in this movie that you're trying to
Mhm.
figure out who it is. There's something fucked up going on in general, and you're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Just like the
But I meant
character,
like
you're piecing all that
if
together,
a
and like
smart movie is something I interact better with than like, oh, jump scares aren't like smart. It's like, oh, you startled someone. Like
yeah, but horror movies generally tend to be their goal is to scare you, the audience. This movie's not
yeah.
a horror movie that's trying to scare you from like a like oh my god I'm frightened perspective. It's trying to scare your traditional thoughts, right? It's trying to be subvertive, I guess I should say,
Yeah, make
of
you
horror.
like
And
really have a thought, a big think session afterwards.
but thinking in a dark way, like you're thinking about things that are not good things to think about, right? They're horrific things to
Sure.
think about. That's how it's horror, but it's a thought-provoking horror. If you've ever seen the original Exorcist, that it does a lot of the same. Like for those who haven't seen the original Exorcist, you need to see that movie. I watched it for the first time even only like 3 years ago, and I was like, holy crap, this movie still holds up like so much. Like that movie is such tension, such good character building. Like it just, I didn't know that movie like travels the world before you even see the infamous scene that everyone knows with the head spinning and the
Yeah.
priest like that's been reincarnated and everyone's reenacted 17 different times. um but that scene's like near the end of the movie. The rest of the movie's just tense, building to that, building. You're like,
Mhm.
wow. um some of the good horror staples, by the way, that I mentioned that he uses, Peel uses in this, things like not just I was mentioning the violin soundtrack and the very tense music, camera shots. Everyone knows I'm a
I know
big,
you're a big sucker for camera shots. Yeah.
but there are camera shots that you can use in horror that are staples of like the horror genre. One of them is always the moving vehicle shot where you have outside the window and it's just showing like woods, and as the credits roll and stuff like that, like that's in a lot of horror movies where it's just the camera is literally not showing any characters, it's just showing woods, like kind of trying to give you an idea that there's a lot of places to hide bodies and there's a lot of, you know what I mean, like what's going on, you're a long way from civilization, are there even cops out here, like think like the shots used to try to establish tones, right? Like that you're distant, you're far, and traditional horror shots, camera shots are used to do that, I guess I should say.
Mhm.
And I'm a fan of that stuff.
Yeah, I've generally haven't seen a lot of stuff in that genre because it was never something I was into growing up, and then I just haven't really expanded
If you've
that
seen
way.
any thrillers, a lot of them will use some of that those techniques as well. Like
Mhm.
again, they're generally there are ways to enact audience emotion without anyone ever saying anything. A camera shot can do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's about essentially it's about building a perspective, and you need to use your camera shots in a way that help build that perspective. And I'd say in Get Out, the camera shots definitely help with the tension, like so much. They build something. They help build something that's obviously being built from plot, from dialogue, etc. As well. So yeah, definitely fantastic movie. Uh, People need to give it a watch. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on it if you actually get a chance to see it.
Yeah. Although we are one deep dive removed because we still have to do that one about Master of None, which
Yes.
I have finished.
Yes, maybe we'll get into that at another time, but that is a
Yes.
fantastic show.
Yes, it is.
So
Also has some good camera shots.
that'll do unless you have anything else you want to cover, Kyle.
No, I think that'll do it.
Leave it for another week.
Leave it for another week.
Sequel spin-offs.
Yeah.
Good addition.
I'm gonna have to come up with a good subtitle for this one because I don't think we
Get Out.
Yeah, no, that's kind of lame.
We talked to Get Out.
We did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it for me though.
That is.
I don't know. I don't have any good. Do we have any good lingo we need to say? Like, subscribe. People know that already.
I hate when we do that.
It's like the 300th edition of this show. No, it's like the 50th.
No, we're only like 6 weeks into this project, eh? Like we're still cranking. It feels like we've been doing a lot though. Like we're how many?
I know it's
videos?
we do so much.
We do a lot of
Anyway,
content.
We'll worry about this off the air. Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah.
Sequels and spin-offs. Don't have a tagline. Kyle will come up with something clever. He always does. Pew pew pew. See you next week.
Generic tagline.